You got Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. We are joined by our bud from Fox 29, Mr. Scott Grayson, who looks ready for some football. He's gone non-hoodie on us. He's actually got a nice dress golf shirt.
Yeah. Oh, he's a TV guy. He's got to look sharp. You know, we can show up with the hoodies and
Apparently, I don't look sharp because these guys keep ripping me on the. I had surgery on my head. Okay, that's why I've got black eyes. Trauma to my head. I'm not fuzzying up my camera. I don't give a shit what I look like. If I did, I wouldn't be doing the show. I would have backed out and go, just put Grayson in for me. He's a TV guy. He looks good. If looking good was the key determinant, then I sure as hell wouldn't be here. But Scott Grayson, you do look good. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here. I always appreciate the invitation. And what you have, Jody, what you look like you got going on here is a good playoff football look.
Yeah.
You got your ass kicked look more than anything else. But thank you for noticing.
Hey, you're doing great. You're coming to work, punching the clock no matter what.
That's right.
That's the Philly way.
Exactly right.
That's the Philly way. Rocky, you fight through it. You fight through it. And the Eagles are fighting through it. Or are they, Scott? Because, hey, I said before the playoffs started, this is the matchup I would have wanted for the Eagles. But, first of all, that old trope, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, even though the numbers say the exact opposite. Then you had Clete Blakeman as the official. I just brought that up. We'll go down that route. You might want to throw this on the show. The Eagles are 13-1 when Clete Blakeman is the referee. Things look good on paper, don't they, Scott?
They do, and sometimes, I guess as an Eagles fan, right, that's what causes you to kind of look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, if things are too good to be true or they look too good to be true, do I need to stop and think about what I'm missing here, right? I agree with you, John. I think this is the matchup that a lot of people as Eagles fans were looking at and saying this is a good one. This is what you'd like to have. I mean, it just everything screams Eagles, all the stats. I mean, the pressure you get from the defense. You're getting healthier on the back end with Gardner Johnson having shaken off some rust in that last regular season game against the Giants. I don't expect Devonta Maddox back this week, but he's getting closer. On offense, you've got Lane Johnson back in there again. And, everything says this team at home, with the crowd on a Saturday night, like the NFL is giving these fans plenty of time to get all lathered up and ready to
all day. Nice job, NFL.
It says it should be Eagles. I mean, the spread is saying Eagles by more than a touchdown. Last I looked, I feel like it's all right there. It's the only way this team loses is if they beat themselves.
Yeah.
Did your confidence level in Jalen Hurts' shoulder improve in the last 24 hours, Scott Grayson?
Honestly, Jody, I've been one of those people all along who hasn't been all that worried about it, because when I saw what he did in the fourth quarter in Chicago after hurting it, that was an impressive quarter for a healthy quarterback, let alone a guy with a sore shoulder. I think they just were being very careful, which was the prudent and smart thing to do. But now that you're in the playoffs, I know he's not on the injury report now. Obviously, that does make me feel a little better. To not have any kind of injury designation there from practicing. But overall, I think you look at Jalen Hurts and you've got to take the leash off him now. You've got to let Jalen be Jalen. Let him be the guy who got you here in the first place. And I fully expect that they will. Like, you're in the playoffs now. It's survive and advance. You got to go out there with your best. And I think you got to go out there with your best Jalen, which is letting him do what he does best. He's just got to be smart in the process. And I think he's more than capable of doing that.
You mentioned, and I go back to that Washington game, and I agree with you, Scott. Like the Eagles are 14-1 when Jalen Hurts starts, and the one loss is the Washington game. And they kind of say behind the scenes, maybe we're 15-0 because we beat ourselves with the 4 turnovers and all that stuff that happened in that game, not being able to get off the field, huge time of possession. But if you look at the New York Giants and you throw that out and say, all right, yeah, if the Eagles shoot themselves in the foot, is there anything personnel wise that you say, oh, we might have a problem with this from the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's another thing you look at and say every matchup almost favors the Eagles. But the one thing that you look at and where you could go, Jody, back to Jalen Hurts is we know the Giants love to blitz. They're the highest blitzing team in the league. So now I know they didn't blitz a ton against the Vikings, which was a little uncharacteristic. Partially might have been what confused Kirk Cousins a little bit. But, I expect that they will go back to being what they are. They're going to come at you with what they do best. They blitz. And I think they're going to look to get Jalen out of the pocket. They're going to look to get him out moving around. They want him moving. They want him testing that shoulder on the move. They want him potentially turning upfield and running the ball. And whether or not they're there to be able to make the plays is going to be another story. But I think if you look at it, it's not so much personnel that concerns me at all with the Giants. It's how will the Eagles handle what they do? Is Lane Johnson going to be well enough to shift quickly and pick up a blitzer? To make the read he needs to make on that offensive line to stop that guy coming through. Those are the kind of things that I think are going to be more interesting to watch. There's not really any personnel that concerns me here. I mean, they held Saquon Barkley in check the first time. The game one is what I look at. That last game of the regular season was junk, and obviously it was what it was. But there's nothing personnel-wise that says to me, Daniel Jones with his legs even is the one thing I concern myself with potentially a little bit, but the Eagles linebackers are built to be able to handle something like that. And this line gets to you in a hurry. So, no, I'm not too worried about any one person or any matchup specifically personnel-wise with that team.
All right, so I appreciate the fact that you cut Kirk Cousins some slack. Did they blitz on that massive 4th and 8 4-yard?
That was just Dexter Lawrence bulldozing.
That was bad.
Cleveland. Yeah.
Kurt, what the hell were you thinking there, buddy? Anyway, last time the Eagles and Giants played regulars against regulars up at MetLife 6 weeks ago, the Eagles only registered 7 sacks against Daniel Jones, including 3 by BG Brandon Graham. How big is the Eagles pass rush in this game? Because to Daniel Jones's credit, he's played better. Still don't think he's great. Think he's good. Think he's a solid quarterback and he's capable of playing a nice game against the Eagles this week. How much pressure do they need to get on him to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I think that's the key. It was twofold, right? Like I said, they did a good job of limiting Saquon Barkley and putting the Giants in some, 2nd and 3rd and longs. That helps any defensive pass rush. And if they can do that again, I have full confidence that Daniel Jones will make some mistakes. And that pass rush is good. I mean, we all, at times, I have been critical of Gannon as well with his defensive style and the lack of blitzing, but they're getting there without the blitz. And to his credit, he hasn't changed who he is, despite the criticism that comes from this city. And I think in this game, it sets up very well for the Eagles to get home without having the need to blitz. And it's key. You want to get back there. And even if you don't get back there, you've got to hit the quarterback. And if you can hit Jones and you start making him aware you're there, he's going to throw it up and you're going to get some interceptions. I think that's the game plan right there. Is just limit the running game enough with Saquon that you can get out there and then get that pass rush home with all these guys they have on this defensive line. I mean, it's ridiculous that they have almost like a hockey line change they can do on that defensive line with the amount of guys who can get home. It is a huge advantage to this defense when you get in the postseason. I know everybody keys every team in the league, but this defense I fully expect. I'm looking to see this defense, quite frankly, be how they win this game. To me, that's what I want to see. I want them to get home. Like you said, 7 sacks. Go get Daniel Jones. Just get him down. Don't even let him get out of the pocket. And I think they're capable of doing that. This is a really good defensive line that I think will set the tone.
I do want to bring up Saquon just from the standpoint of, that guy's talented. I mean, he is really, really talented. And, we talk about the Eagles' personnel advantages and all the great decisions Howie Roseman has made, rightfully so. One of them's Kaiser White. Doesn't get as much, hype, nor should he, as Hassan Reddick and A.J. Brown and James Bradbury, but really solid pickup. He has, however, kind of faltered down the stretch. Now, he played great in the Giants in Week 18, but as you said, I kind of junked that. That was a junk game. I throw that out. Saquon was not out there. The 2 previous games, he really, really struggled. Probably his worst games of the year. And this guy in the passing game, I'm not worried as much about Saquon in the running game. The Eagles play how they play against the run, and they're going to give up some runs because they're more concerned about the big play down the field. But when he gets the football with those swing passes, that concerns me a little bit. Am I overestimating that?
No, I don't think you are, because as he vacates the backfield, that's going to create an issue of, and this is where I'll be curious to see whether the Eagles leave any kind of spy in the mix for Daniel Jones. But when you bring the back out, you take a linebacker most likely on him, of course, like you said. What does that do for what you're leaving behind for potentially Daniel Jones to escape a pocket and go somewhere? As well as, like you said, Saquon is really good out of the backfield. He's a good receiver. Once he gets those pads north-south, that's the key. You got to get upfield and get there when he catches the ball, not allow him to get north-south and then be able to make some moves. I think that is going to be a thing you've got to watch this week. They're going to be looking to get the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands fast. Well, how do you do that? You've got to utilize the back. You've got to utilize your tight ends. So that is going to be that is their biggest strength, Saquon Barkley and his versatility. And I got to believe that they're going to go down swinging with their best, and that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on. But like you said, Kyzir White in Week 18 did play better. Why is that significant? I think it allowed him to build some confidence because you're right, he has struggled down the stretch. So I looked at that, and that was one of the takeaways I took was I'm seeing Kyzir White flying around the field in a way I haven't seen him the last few weeks. And I know it was the backups for the Giants, but in terms of building confidence and getting back into a rhythm, I thought that was key. And we'll see how much it matters for him to build off of that this coming week. But because I think he will be, with his speed, he is going to be one of those guys who's going to have to keep an eye on Barkley when he gets out of the backfield. And so that will be a matchup to watch.
Scotty, no, even after this game is played, hopefully, still less than 2 full years in Nick Sirianni's coaching career. That being said, how important is this game to his career resume? I know it's only going to grow. We hope Sirianni's around here for a nice long period of time, and we got a big sample size to judge from, but playoff wins are playoff wins. And you can go 14-3, but if you get picked off at home by a 7-point underdog in the first round, kind of makes that 14-3 disappear. How important is this game to Nick Sirianni's coaching resume?
I think it's big, Jody. I don't think you can understate how big this is. You're right. 14-3, you've got this home game here, a home playoff game. If they lose this game to a division opponent, no less, who's been in the realms of the dungeons for the last, decade or so, for the most part, you allow them to get up off the mat and go to the NFC Championship game by beating you at home. This town will not let you forget that for a while. And it'll be a long offseason full of plenty of criticism of having the good team and not being able to take it anywhere close to the finish line. I set the bar when this season started with, I need to see them get a playoff win. Now, I know they advanced to a further round than they did last year, but I still want to see that. I need to see that playoff win. And this gets you to the NFC Championship game. You've got everything set up for you. You've got the weakest opponent remaining in the NFC. It's there for you. And if you can't get it done, that speaks volumes to then what's not happening that you can't get it done in the playoffs. I look back to last year. There's people who say there shouldn't be 7 teams in the playoffs. Maybe not. I mean, what was broken was 6. But when you look back to last year, the Eagles getting that playoff experience with this young team, that young quarterback, this coaching staff, I expect that to pay dividends this year. I got to believe they learned a lot in that experience last year going down to Tampa with preparation, with focus, with game planning. And now you're the dog, you're the big dog, you've got the target on your back. How do you handle that? I think there's a lot to be learned from last year, and I need to see that pay off with a good win at home this year.
Yeah, it was interesting. Talked about that with Nick Sirianni yesterday. He kind of downplayed it, Scott, but the players, they said, especially Jordan Mailata, they said it was very valuable. So certainly I think from a player perspective, at least, Nick's very cognizant of nothing changes. Week 1, Detroit, playoffs, preparation stays the same. I get that from a coaching perspective. But, and I want to talk about the coaching staff as a whole. It's kind of strange to me. Brian Daboll, tremendous job. I think he should be coach of the year. I've said it because my definition is doing the most with the least, and I think that defines him. Doesn't mean he's a better coach than Nick Sirianni, or that staff is a better staff than this staff, which was, again, they were 14-1 with their starting quarterback. But you get this narrative in Philadelphia. Forget about New York. In Philadelphia, where their coaching staff is better than ours. Is that just the typical Philadelphia angst? Because this staff is pretty damn good.
The staff in New York you're talking about?
Well, both, but
yeah,
the staff in Philadelphia. But I get the feeling that there's a lot of Eagles fans, not all of them, a lot of Eagles fans who think, that staff is better than our staff. I don't get that mentality.
No, and that's partly because of what I said before about the anxiety we all get watching Jonathan Gannon, right? They get a big lead.
It's always poor JJ.
and how much credit then do you give Shane Steichen because you know that Nick Sirianni's an offensive coach? There's that, I think, that all goes into it, and that perception. How good has this staff been? Well, you look at, to me, I look back at last year to this year, and I'll take Jonathan Gannon first. Last year, a very passive defense. Clearly something happened where he said, I need XYZ type of personnel to fit what I want to do. And they gave it to him. And now you see what's happened as a result. Very successful defense, very successful, almost historic level of sacks that this team was able to do with very minimal blitzing. And then they've got the back end to be able to get plays done, the personnel there. To me, I think that Jonathan Gannon deserves a lot of credit. He makes me pull my hair out, a little more gray here on the sides watching this team with
at least you got hair to pull out.
Leads. They get passive with the lead, but he's playing the long game and knowing the analytics and the stats, they have very little time left on the clock, blah, blah, blah. I get it. You can't argue with the results. They're winning. Shane Steichen, look, there's a reason these guys are getting a lot of job opportunities. Steichen has, the interviews just like Gannon does, and I expect one or if not both to be gone from here. That doesn't happen because of all the talking of going on. These teams are doing their homework. How much are these guys really, a factor in the success of this team? I think the interviews and the job interviews tell you about their reputation and their work ethic. I think that's a big key. But you're right. I think that you've got to give credit to the Giants coaching staff and more around the league. Look at the coaches that are left. What is the common theme? They create winning and positive cultures within their buildings. Doug Peterson has totally changed, like he did here coming in after Chip Kelly, has changed the culture in Jacksonville in 1 year. Had to remake that culture from what Urban Meyer did. That wasn't an easy task. You look at Daboll. He's changed the culture there in New York. I think that's the biggest, factor. And I think the players are responding to that. That's what today's players want. They want that kind of winning culture. They want to feel that coach has their back. I think Daboll's done a great job of that. I think Gannon and his staff have done a great job of that too. So you're going to see two good coaches and coaching staffs here in Philadelphia on Saturday.
Wow, you've just planted a seed in my mind. Best way to succeed as an NFL head coach. Jump in after an overrated college coach is destroying the program, and you all of a sudden become a superhero.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. Follow Doug Peterson's lead. Replace Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer, and you too can be considered a phenomenal coach. I never put those two together. Shame on me for that. Thank you for that, Scott Grayson. All right. Sounds like I'm a bigger Jonathan Gannon fan than you are. McMullen, unquestionably a bigger Jonathan Gannon fan than you are. But here's one concern that I do have for the game coming up on Saturday. The whole they don't blitz enough thing is idiotic. The fans who go down that road, they got to be more aggressive. As you just pointed out, almost historic sack numbers. When you get that, you can't question how he goes about getting it. And the fact that people still do just makes me nuts. But I think a more legit concern is they don't play aggressively on the outsides, on the corners. They don't press. They play zone. They play zone 95% of the time. And the Giants, with their somewhat surprising, maybe even overachieving wide receivers, certainly no one with any kind of a track record, they have less 25-yard down the field plays than anyone in the National Football League. They're dead last, 32nd out of 32. So if they're going to throw the football, it's either going to be Barkley out of the backfield or quick hitters to their wide receivers. Do you have any faith that Gannon will let Bradford and Slay get up and play some bump and run coverage on Saturday against the Giants, because at least as per the statistics, that's one thing you can and should be looking to take away from the Giants.
Yeah, and I think that's been what I've been waiting for this, because the last few weeks in December, as they were that one win away from clinching the number 1 seed, I felt like they got they closed down the playbook a little bit, and they got more vanilla on defense, especially with all the zone against the Cowboys. They played the Giants a little bit loose because I think they knew they had the chance to face these teams in the playoffs and didn't want to tip their cap too much, head to head like that. And so I want to see Gannon go back. These, to me, Slay and Bradbury are two guys who want that one-on-one coverage. They want that pressure on them to make a play. And I think they're better, frankly, in those areas. So I expect Gannon to go back to, and do more of letting them, play their game. But you're right. It is a frustrating thing watching this team in so much zone. And Dak Prescott just picked it apart in that Dallas game, left and right. It was that vanilla. And I think that I expect, and again, look, Gannon, we've all heard the reports. He's believed to be a front runner or one of the front runners for the Houston Texans job. And you got a job interview here on Saturday night. I would expect him to unleash a great game plan to show that he's got all these different weapons and tools and this versatility, and can confuse the heck out of Daniel Jones. And I want to see these corners play more that way. I mean, at times it's like it's screaming, play pressure coverage, press them, jab them at the line. You're right, Jody. They don't threaten you downfield. So what's the best way to disrupt a route? You jab them at the line and get the timing off. I mean, it's screaming to do that more this week. But as Gannon frustrates us, I expect that at times he will drop into zone when we're saying, no, it's telling you to do. He knows more football than I do. You got to trust him. But I agree with you at those corners. I want to see them playing more man and more pressure coverage. I can't stand the loose zones.
Yeah, nobody can. It's not aesthetic, but if you watch wild card football, you saw a lot of zone coverages around, and the Eagles do it better than anybody else. So I think contextually, I think that's where JG kind of sets himself apart. At S Grayson Box 29, follow him on Twitter. Host of Props and Locks, 6:30, right, Scott? Every Friday.
6:30 Friday night. We got a lot of playoff stuff we're going to get into this weekend. It should be a lot of fun.
My lock this week in props and locks is the Boston Scott touchdown. The Eagles are well aware of the numbers, and they kind of like to troll the Giants by getting Boston Scott the touch that gets him the touchdown. What's your lock this week when you're talking about the Eagles Giants?
It is funny you said that, because I've thought that from the moment that matchup started. It's like, well, and you'd see the memes on Twitter and social media. I mean, the different, Boston Scott strutting into the office, all these different guys, because he knows he's going to get one this week. He has. It's what history says will happen. To me, that's a great one. To that extent, I wonder if the Eagles have considered, I mean, you look at I know they won't, because they're creatures of habit, but how great would it be to throw him back there on some punt returns or a kickoff return? Or two.
Well, he might get the kickoff return. Yeah, he's still doing a great job.
I'm all for getting the guy some more touches, because clearly he produces against this team, and that, like, it's got to be in their heads, right? The Giants, and so to me that's a great one. Another one this week, I would expect you could play a Dak Prescott interception. I expect he'll throw one. I think, on that side of the ball, that's great. The AFC is just going to be fun to watch, because I think that's going to just be a heavyweight fight, street fight.
All right, I'll give you one since you bring up the AFC. I'm going to give you another one, Scott. Go over 5 sacks of Joe Burrow, because that Cincinnati offensive line is really banged up. Ton of injuries.
Yep.
Plus, Joe likes to hang on to the football. He's that guy that likes to hang on to it to the very last minute, try to get the big plays down the field, and he'll get some of them. But he's going to get knocked down quite a bit, I think.
It's not a bad one. And the other thing with if you look at Cincinnati, they haven't had a home playoff game, last week, but they're playing so many games on the road, and now this one is a tough one as well. And it's not a bad thought there. I know a lot of people want to see Jacksonville be competitive with Kansas City. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm rooting for Doug, but I'm with you.
Let me close it out with you on this note, Scott. I'm going to give you a multiple choice question.
Okay.
And I know full well the answer is probably somewhere between A and B, but you have to pick either A or B. Which are the two are you closer to? It's a stone cold lock that sometime in the very near future, Brock Purdy turns back into a pumpkin and the rookiness shows out and he makes a big mistake and he crashes and burns. Or this guy is the second coming of Kurt Warner. Out of the supermarket, stocking shelves, NFL Europe, the Arena League, and he takes the Rams all the way to the Super Bowl and runs the greatest show on turf. We know the answer is somewhere in the middle between those two things, but which one are you closer to, A or B?
See, I'm of the opinion that I will give you your answer after I give an explainer. I'm of the opinion that he is partially a product of the talent around him. Now that, he's done a great job. The Eagles have not made him, not the Eagles, teams have not made him have to win the game with his arm by throwing 30 to 40 times. What will happen when that happens? That I want to see. I think, when you line him up with Christian McCaffrey, which was a huge and amazing trade for them to make in the season, that's been a key piece. You had the Mr. Versatility, Deebo Samuel. You got George Kittle over the middle, who has been a real big security blanket for Purdy. And then you give him the defense he has on the other side of the ball. Has he really had to win a game for them?
And don't forget Brandon Ayuk as well. He's a playmaker.
So has he really had to win a game for them? So will he turn back into a pumpkin? I'll tell you this, Jody. I want to see, as much as it would be a phenomenal week of trash talk and God knows what here in Philadelphia if it's Eagles-Cowboys for an NFC Championship game, I kind of want to see this Eagles defense against that Niners offense and what they would do with Purdy and how he would answer to get a better answer, frankly, to your question. Which way is he leaning towards? Am I leaning towards? I think he's shown enough to show he can be a player in this league. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer like Kurt Warner. Can he be a starting quarterback in this league? Yes, I'm convinced he can be a starting quarterback in this league. Yeah. I think I don't know if that answers your question well enough.
Yeah, it does. I like the Parsons
qualifier that a lot of people do. Oh, but look at all the weapons he had. Well, guess what? Kurt Warner had all those weapons too, and nobody said, "Oh, Kurt Warner's not really good."
I think the better comp is Jimmy Garoppolo. For everyone who says Jimmy had all that, but he didn't play as well as Brock Purdy. So for the people that completely crap on Brock Purdy, I think he is playing well. But I'm not going to hedge, Scott. I'm going to predict pumpkin and midnight strikes January 29th in Philadelphia.
That's what I'm
apart in front of a bunch of 70,000 people where you can hear the noise across the Delaware River. Completely falls apart. That's my prediction.
We'll get a good early look at that. What does he do when Micah Parsons is harassing him? And what do the Niners do to try to avoid that? Because that's Micah Parsons who can get that rush. But when you have
he might not even get here. You're right. That Cowboys team, they lack consistency, but if they play well, they can beat anybody. So he might not even get here.
Tone, save that clip. Completely falls apart again.
Completely falls apart. I'm not running from it.
Way the hell out there on the limb on that one.
Yeah. By the way, I heard that same sentiment from a certain Eagles player yesterday in the locker room. They're not supposed to look ahead, but they're chomping at the bit to get at Brock Purdy.
Okay,
I'm sure.
Be careful what you wish for. Scotty Locke, we wish always a pleasure whenever you jump on board with us. Give our boy Eitan a hey for us. Thank you much for doing it today.
Yeah, Eitan, usually you have to smack him in the face a couple times.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, you got it, guys. Thank you.
Fox 29 here with us on Birds 365. All right, running a little late. We got to come back, put a bow on